All right, here we are. It has been a minute.
Wow.
Yeah. Not only for you and I to be together, but I've recorded a podcast in a little bit of time, and we're gonna flip the script today. And Ben, my friend Ben Cope, who's here with me on the first episode, is going to be the host today, and I am the interviewee. And so, so welcome to the Leader Farming Podcast. And Ben is your host today. Ben, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Zach, for having me, giving me the opportunity to ask you some questions to dig a little deeper into who you are as a person, but more importantly, who you're becoming.
Mm.
And I want to start off to kind of set the stage for this little interview with a Dallas Willard quote that I'm sure you're familiar with. And Dallas Willard says, "The most important thing in life is not what you do, it's who you're becoming." So with that in mind, can you talk a little bit about what season of life you're in right now? What brought you to this moment of time? And who are you becoming in this process?
Yeah, that's such a great quote. Actually, it's on my computer. So yeah, it's right here. The most important thing about a man is not what he or she does, but who he or she becomes. Such a great reminder of that. And my season right now is I have somewhat been jolted into winter, and it's it came. Well, you could say it may. I think it is a winter season, and there's a storm. There was a blizzard, so winter was already here in several ways, but then there was a blizzard that came and dumped a bunch of snow, and it reminds me, as we sit here on the farm, it reminds me of 1993, when the blizzard hit our community, and we had like 3 feet of snow, and the chicken houses, which sit right up there on top of the hill, one of them caved in, and I spent days. In fact, I had my best friend was staying he came over because he always came over when it was going to snow, because I was, we had the farm and 4-wheelers and motorcycles and stuff, and we'd ride around and play in the snow, and had a lot of hills to ride sleds and stuff down. And he, whenever there was a threat of snow, he wanted to come over and stay the night. Well, he got stranded here, and I remember we worked so hard over the course of a couple days. We had no power. We were trying to get the chickens out of the collapsed house, as many as we could save, over to the other house, and it was a lot of long days and hard work. And I remember his name was Brad. Brad said, he's like, if you can't get me home today, I'm gonna walk. Like I'm walking home. We were both obviously pretty exhausted, and but it was that storm that jolted us into some heavy work, and having to dig deep into your stamina, and physically is what we're talking about as it relates to that particular circumstance. But for me, right now, I'm having dig deep into doing some heavy lifting, some heavy soul work. And so the circumstances, the storm that came, is basically the situation that many of my close friends and family know about, and maybe some of the listeners out there are hearing for the first time. But I was applying to be multi-unit here in
with Chick-fil-A.
Yep, here in my hometown of. I live in Cedartown. My restaurant's in Rockmart, and there are 2-bedroom communities of the Atlanta area, and about 12 and a half, 13 miles apart in terms of the communities. And to make a long story short, the process was it's a 17-year dream for me. Like I wanted to own a restaurant in my hometown where I'm from, in Cedartown. The first opportunity I got with Chick-fil-A was in Marietta, which is where I met you. So I'm grateful for that, thankful for that. And then fast forward to 2017, Chick-fil-A says, "Hey, we're gonna build a store in Polk County, and if you want to ask for it." So I asked for it, applied for it, got it, and then became the operator in Rockmart, which was to me close enough to realizing my dream of having a restaurant in Cedartown. A lot of people don't understand that. Like, well, why didn't you build one in Cedartown first? Well, it doesn't work that way.
Kind of wasn't up to you, though.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
So Chick-fil-A decides kind of where it's going to go, and here we are a few years later. 5 years after opening Rockmart, and they're going to build one in Cedartown. I'm like, oh man, this is great. This is a dream come true. Like I can own both stores and be in Rockmart and Cedartown, and really impact. Which we're already doing a lot from Rockmart across the county, but yeah, so it was really exciting, an exciting thought, an exciting opportunity. For me, I say, although money would be nice, and as I said in my recent blog, it provides a false sense of security, but it really was probably more about the influence for me, and having the opportunity to influence on a broader scale in my local community, and so I was basically granted, or I expressed interest in the opportunity, and then was not allowed to apply for multi-unit because ultimately it was determined that it was too far, which Chick-fil-A doesn't work like a lot of other franchises, and so they felt that they were separate, more of separate communities than we feel like it is here locally, and that's okay. It's what I'm learning, some of the real things that I'm digging deeper into, and probably won't go into much detail with this yet because I'm still digging pretty deep here, but just this idea of I'm a man under authority, and I'm under Chick-fil-A's authority, and so I've got to accept their decision no matter what.
Right. It's a reminder of the things that you think are under your control that really aren't.
Right.
Like in this case, Chick-fil-A has rules that you fall under, and it's really not up to you. What happens, it's like you said, it comes down to a technicality of the distance between the two stores and their corporate rules, so I know it was painful for you to get the news that they are building a restaurant in Cedartown. You're not going to get a chance to be the operator there. What was your initial response to that? Like,
yeah, so I initially was very angry. During the process of doing having the conversation with the people in charge of making the decision, I was very gracious in my approach, and I was saying like, well, no matter what happens, I trust that God's in control, and but like deep down in my soul, I didn't really believe that. And not only that, like, everything that I've ever attempted in my life, whether it be, in scouting or in the military or whatever, everything that I've ever attempted in my life, I have accomplished. And, here I am at a crossroads where I'm, going to attempt to get a second restaurant, become multi-unit, and I just was not ready for a no. It just wasn't in my vocabulary. It wasn't easy for me to accept. And somewhere along the way, I have a friend, Rob, who's also been here on the podcast, and we meet almost every Friday over the phone, and have for almost a decade. And he several years ago challenged me to read a book called On Death and Dying, and walking through the 5 stages of grief. And it was about something else, much more minuscule in its weight and heaviness as this, but Rob didn't necessarily remind me of it, but I remember in conversation with someone else, I'm like, man, it feels like a death. And then it just hit me like, okay, maybe I need to go back and look at these stages of grief and kind of figure out, where am I? And so, you asked, where was I initially? I think that one, it was denial. Like, I wasn't ready for a no. Like, I couldn't accept that. I couldn't believe that. And then I went to anger on several occasions, but I never allowed that to come out publicly. But then I felt like I was coming to a place of acceptance. There's the final stage of grief is acceptance, and I felt like I was really getting to a place of acceptance until, like, today is Wednesday. Let's see, it's like 3 weeks ago or 2.5 weeks ago. I was at Jiu-Jitsu, and the operator select sent me a message graciously. Gave me a warning and sent me a message, said, hey, just want to give you a heads up. I'm about to post on my personal social media and let friends and family know that I've been accepted to be the operator of Cedartown. And I was thankful, for graciousness, and I said, okay, great. I think I'm good, and then, so obviously the message posted, and then my phone began to blow up, and it was messages from friends and family that had seen her post on social media, and we're like, what the heck?
Right.
Like, I thought you were getting this, and I thought, like, that only makes sense.
So that had to be a little bit humiliating, right?
Humbling. Yeah, it was humbling. It was humiliating. It was painful.
Yeah.
And what it triggered in me was it like, where I thought I was at a further along stage of grief, because I'd had several months to process this. It triggered me back to anger. And I am, fortunately, thankfully, I was at Jiu-Jitsu, so I was able to take out some of my aggression and anger and frustration and whenever. So it's I don't, my friend and coach Chris Matakis talks about how, like, whenever we have our emotions are really, really high, whether it be anger or whatever, like it, we can physically exert energy, and the energy is all being directed into emotions, but the energy has to come from somewhere, so that when you redirect that energy to physical exertion, it leaves you physically exhausted, which depletes the energy focused on the emotional side. And so, sometimes when I get angry or frustrated, I can just, it's why it's helpful to, why it would be helpful to go out and take a baseball bat to a car when you're angry, right? Like, it's just that physical energy being redirected at something else. So I'm at Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm able to really expend energy in another arena. Unfortunately, for my rolling partner, I expended a little too much energy, and I was able to catch him in a guillotine, and I sent it pretty hard, and he tapped immediately and said, "Oh my gosh, my arms went numb," and I'm like panicking, I'm freaking out. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what did I do?" And thank God, his feeling came back, and he was able to drive home. But I remember thinking, "Oh no, like, I'm not okay. Like, something happened there, and that's not okay."
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So, to put things into perspective, knowing that you're still in the middle of this winter season, what do you feel, what do you see is on the other side? Like, because somewhere beneath the soil, something's happening.
Yeah.
Things are growing and germinating, and you can't see it on the outside yet, but I know that you've got a vision for something else that's going to come up out of this.
Yes.
What does that look like? What do you think that will look like?
Well, thankfully, I have this lens for life, and I have to be reminded of it, even though it's something that God gave me years ago. I have to be reminded of it myself, which is one of the reasons I created this podcast, so that I'm having these conversations that constantly remind me of this winter seasonal growth mindset, and that even in the most difficult of times, there is something at work. There is a lot of growth happening. There's things going on underneath the surface. And so I know that my character is growing. I know that I'm being further rooted and grounded in my union with God. I know that things will ultimately work out for the good. I know that God does have my best interest at heart, and that He, may have been saving me from something. I don't want to say that, something bad was going to happen or whatever, as much as He may have just been saving me from myself. Right? Like, knowing that I could not handle the prestige of being a multi-unit operator, and that was too much for my ego. That was too much for my persona, my achievement and performance persona. Like, it was just overload for that side of me, and He knew that, and so He was saving me from myself, if nothing else. And so I see, and I know that after winter comes spring, and there's new birth, and there's growth, and there's so much to share with others from my journey that I get somewhat excited about. And I was just sharing with you earlier this morning, we were sitting over there on the sofas, about how I've started writing again. My personal blog is Jiu-Jitsu with Jesus. You can find it there, jiujitsuvithjesus.com. I haven't posted a lot publicly yet, but I'm writing behind the scenes. I've got a lot that I have written in terms of just things that I want to write about, different subjects on my jiu-jitsu journey. And honestly, nothing has reflected my spiritual journey better in my entire life than my jiu-jitsu journey.
Mm.
And I look forward to sharing that, just some of the pain and the struggle that I've gone through in my jiu-jitsu journey that's reflected in my spiritual journey as well. But one thing in particular is that I, just in the next blog that I'm posting, one of the statements in that blog is that as I write this very minute, I have to check my motive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why am I even writing? Am I feeding that achievement and performance persona? But only God knows the real true motive and how pure it is. Like, is it 90% pure, or is it like 20% pure? It's such a difficult thing to see in yourself. But all I can think in this moment is that I don't want to waste my pain.
Right.
And so I must write, and I must share, as I'm doing here on the podcast. Like, I have to share this, not because I want people to pat me on the back, not because I want people to praise me, but it's because I want to help others potentially see some blind spots that they may have in their journey,
right,
through the lens of my journey.
So ultimately, at the end of the day, Zach's identity is not in being a Chick-fil-A operator. There's something a little deeper. I noticed the t-shirt that you're wearing says chimney sweep. Talk to me about what that means to you. Why is that significant? And explain that.
Yeah. So next week I'm going to get to go be a part of the Become Good Soil Intensive. And for those listeners out there, if they want to know, like, how in the world did I get where I am today, I give more credit to John Eldridge and Wild at Heart team, including Morgan Snyder, than anybody else, because that is really who my spiritual guide is along, in my journey over the last 16, 17 years. And it has been an incredible journey. But you asked a question about my shirt. So one of the things that we do at this retreat, the Become Good Soil Intensive, is we are all chimney sweeps. Everyone comes there. You're not allowed to tell anyone what you do for a living. It's against rules. And I think it's such a beautiful thing, because we as men tend to lead with what we do, because what we do becomes who we are.
Right.
Our persona, our false persona, our false self wants that to be who we are, not our true identity.
Right.
And so we all come as chimney sweeps. And one thing that I realized, so back in even as recent as January of this year, you were with me. We were down in Gulf Shores, Alabama, doing a Wild at Heart basic with a bunch of guys. And I'm a white belt in jiu-jitsu at the time, and although I've been training for about a year and a half, still a white belt, and I there was a guy there that was a purple belt, and here I am wearing my jiu-jitsu t-shirt, and after that weekend, it hit me that I'm hiding, sometimes I hide behind the t-shirts that I wear. It's like I want people to ask me questions about, you just asked me a question about my t-shirt. But, I want people to ask me questions about my t-shirt. Like, oh yeah, I see you're wearing a jiu-jitsu t-shirt. Like, tell me about that.
Right.
Or I'm wearing a Chick-fil-A shirt. Oh, you must be with Chick-fil-A. Or I'm wearing a West Point shirt. Tell me, oh, did you go to West Point? Or I'm wearing an Army Ranger shirt. Oh, were you an Army Ranger? You know, so like I think all too often we hide behind what we've done, and so we have this label on our chest or our hat or whatever that we want people to ask us about, so that we can brag on ourselves or talk about ourselves. And so I honestly didn't own any clothing that didn't have Harley or Jiu-Jitsu or Ranger or Army or Chick-fil-A on it. And so I went to Amazon and I thought, I wonder if they have, you know, somebody's made some shirts that say chimney sweep, because I got to wear something, you know, and or just wear blank stuff, you know. So I am planning on taking some blank, you know, just nothing on it. But like my entire wardrobe for the retreat is gonna either say chimney sweep or it's gonna be blank,
right?
So that I can't hide behind and pose behind that. My goal is that I walk away from, you know, 4 days with these guys and nobody knows I'm a Chick-fil-A operator. Nobody knows I am a, you know, jiu-jitsu guy. Nobody knows I was in the military. Nobody, you know, none of that stuff that I tend to put forward as you know, who I am.
Right. Because the reality is, no matter whether you're a legitimate chimney sweep or a Chick-fil-A operator or another business owner of some kind, we all go through the same things in life. We all face the same struggles. They might look different from the perspective of being a Chick-fil-A operator than they do, you know, in another profession or another line of work. But at the end of the day, we all have the same struggles. And so it really brings us back full circle to that Dallas Willard quote that at the end of the day, what's most important is not what we do, but it's who we're becoming. And I have to say that, you know, throughout the last 6 months, 9 months, or year even, I've been able to witness your integrity. It's easy to say, okay, God, whatever happens, I trust you. It's going to all be okay, because in the back of your mind, you're thinking, you know how it's going to play out. But then things went the other direction and they didn't play out the way you'd worked it out in your mind. And so it's really a kind of a test of sorts that God has you in this grip. And the real question is, what are you going to do? Are you going to tap out? Are you going to surrender and let God do the work that he really wants to do, the more important work? Or are you going to continue fighting what very well may be a futile battle at the end of the day? Because, you know, when you do jiu-jitsu with Jesus, you kind of know who's going to win. Yeah. You know, but I have to just give you a shout out for your integrity above all else. You know, your words have always been positive, uplifting. Even though you've carried inside this anger and pain, I've watched you in the way that you've matured, the way that you really show that you really are becoming a king, and that's more important than who you are as an operator, a business owner. So I admire your integrity above all else. So thank you for, you know, sharing a little bit of that journey. And I'm praying for your next season. We know it's coming. Yeah. Spring always follows winter. Yeah. And that's the beauty of it all, is that the winter season is never the end of a thing. It's going to be spring again. Yeah. So thank you for sharing.
Appreciate it. Thanks for leading this podcast, and I'm tapping out for today. I know that guy will be back because he doesn't die easily, but I'm tapping out for today. So I love you, man. I appreciate you.
Love you too.